There's something about the 1970s that just hits different. The warmth of the production, the way musicians played like they had something to prove. But for every song that made it onto the radio and stayed there, dozens of others quietly faded out. Not because they were bad. Many of them were extraordinary. They just didn't get the break they deserved. So today, we're going back to dig up the tracks that time nearly buried. These are the 15 hidden gems from the 1970s, music you've never heard of. Number 15, Jesus Was a Crossmaker by Judy Sill, 1971.
Sweet silver angels over the sea.
If you've never heard the name Judy Sill, you're not alone. And that's exactly the problem. She was signed to Asylum Records in the early 1970s, the same label that launched Jackson Browne and the Eagles, and yet never got anywhere near the recognition her music warranted.
One time I trusted a stranger 'cause I heard his sweet.
Jesus Was a Crossmaker came out in 1971 on her self-titled debut album, produced by Graham Nash. The song was written while Sill was reading Nikos Kazantzakis' novel, The Last Temptation of Christ, in which Jesus is depicted as a carpenter who built the very crosses the Romans used for crucifixion. She wove that image into a song about heartbreak and the possibility of forgiveness.
Reminded me he's abandoned.
In a 1972 interview, she called it the best thing she had ever written. The orchestration is lush, strings, layered vocals, a careful arrangement that takes real skill. Cass Elliot covered it on her 1972 album. The Hollies recorded it on Romany that same year. Linda Ronstadt and Warren Zevon followed later in the decade. That kind of attention from fellow artists says everything. Sill recorded only 2 albums before addiction and illness took over. She passed away in 1979, largely forgotten. Decades later, a devoted community of listeners has kept her music alive, and this song remains the perfect place to start.
Please come down, fly in love.
Number 14, Suavecito by Malo, 1972. Before we go any further, think about how rarely a song becomes the soundtrack to an entire cultural identity. Suavecito, released in 1972 by San Francisco-based Malo, did exactly that. Malo was formed in 1971 and led by Jorge Santana, the brother of Carlos Santana. The group blended Latino rhythms, rock, jazz, and blues, with a full horn and percussion section that gave their recordings a richness you didn't hear in many other places. The song started as a poem. Richard Bean, Malo's timbal player and lead vocalist, wrote it for a girl he had a crush on at Mission High School in San Francisco. She never read it. That undelivered love letter eventually made its way to rehearsal, and with guitarist Abel Zarate and bassist Pablo Tellez helping shape the melody, it became Suavecito, which means soft or smooth in Spanish. The song reached number 18 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 8 on the Adult Contemporary chart in the spring of 1972. But what happened outside the charts was bigger. In Chicano communities across California, it became a symbol, played at community gatherings and lowrider shows. To this day, it is widely referred to as the Chicano National Anthem. The original lineup broke up before Malo even completed their first national tour, and they never had another top 40 hit. In 1999, Sugar Ray referenced Suavecito in the chorus of their hit Every Morning, but the original still stands apart. Number 13, Virginia Plain by Roxy Music, 1972. By 1972, Roxy Music had released their debut album and earned serious attention in the UK music press. But their label, Island Records, noticed there was no obvious single on the record, so they went back into the studio. What they recorded at London's Command Studios was Virginia Plain, a song that broke virtually every rule a pop single was supposed to follow. No proper chorus. The song's title didn't appear until the very last moment. The intro faded in rather than opening with a hook. Guitarist Phil Manzanera later described it as a song that did everything backwards, and still worked. The name came from a pop art painting Bryan Ferry had made during his art school days at Newcastle University. The lyric was deeply rooted in real experience. The opening verse referred to the band's actual lawyer, a man named Robert E. Lee, not the Confederate general, but a solicitor at a London firm. When Ferry sang about hoping he wouldn't blow their deal, he meant it literally.
Throw me a line, I'm sinking fast.
The recording even included real motorcycle engine sounds, captured in the middle of the night at Piccadilly Circus. Released on August 4th, 1972, the single hit number 4 on the UK singles chart after the band performed it on Top of the Pops on August 24th. The debut album climbed back up to number 10 on the strength of that one performance. David Bowie was so taken with the track that at his Ziggy Stardust launch party that same summer, the only music he allowed played other than his own was Virginia Plain. In the US, it barely registered, but in Britain, it introduced Roxy music to a generation.
Far beyond the pale horizon.
Number 12, Blind Alley by Fanny, 1972. The name Fanny might not ring a bell for most people today, but in the early 1970s, they were one of the most talked about rock bands in the country, and one of the most overlooked, for all the wrong reasons. Fanny was formed by sisters June and Jean Millington, who had moved with their family from the Philippines to Sacramento, California in 1961. With drummer Alice DeBreuer and keyboardist Nicky Barclay, they were signed to Reprise Records in 1969. One of the first all-female rock bands to land a major label deal, producer Richard Perry signed them after watching a 15-minute audition at a Hollywood studio. Blind Alley appeared on their 1972 album Fanny Hill, recorded at Apple Studios in London, the studio built and used by the Beatles. Written by Nicky Barclay, it came at you hard, a driving rocker built on June Millington's power chords and Alice DeBoer's drumming. Retrospective reviewers have noted its energy anticipated what bands like AC/DC and Heart would be doing later in the decade. David Bowie called Fanny extraordinary. The Go-Go's, the Bangles, and the Runaways all cited them as a key influence. But Fanny disbanded in 1975 without ever receiving the recognition they had earned. Number 11, This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us, by Sparks, 1974. To understand why this song matters, you have to picture what watching Sparks on BBC's Top of the Pops in April 1974 must have been like. Singer Russell Mael, bare-chested, long curls bouncing, singing wide-eyed into the camera. On the other side, sitting motionless behind a keyboard, his brother Ron, stone-faced, with a small mustache that made him look like something out of a black and white film. The contrast was so jarring that John Lennon reportedly called Ringo Starr to say he had just seen Mark Bolan performing with Adolf Hitler. Sparks was an American band formed in Los Angeles in the mid-1960s. After 2 failed US albums, they relocated to England in 1973, signed with Island Records, and recorded Kimono My House with a new British lineup. This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us was the lead single. Ron Malo wrote it entirely, packing the vocal lines so tightly with syllables that Russell had to adapt his voice to fit. Ron could only play the song in the key of A, and that was that. The Top of the Pops performance caused a sensation. Producer Muff Winwood later recalled sales of 200,000 singles processed in a single day after the broadcast. The song peaked at number 2 on the UK singles chart. In the United States, it did not chart at all. Bands like Duran Duran, Erasure, Joy Division, New Order, and the Sex Pistols have all pointed to Sparks as a turning point in how they understood what music could do. Number 10, I've Got the Music in Me by the Kiki D Band, 1974.
I got the music in me. I got the music in me.
Kiki D is probably best remembered today for her 1976 duet with Elton John, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. But 2 years before that, she had a track that deserved far more attention than it received.
They say that life is a circle.
Born Pauline Matthews in Bradford, England, Dee had been working in music since her early teens. A session singer, a backup vocalist for Dusty Springfield, and eventually the first white British artist to sign with Motown Records. It was only after joining Elton John's Rocket Record Company that things began to shift. I've Got the Music in Me was written by Bias Boschel, the keyboardist in the Kiki D Band, and produced by Gus Dudgeon. Elton John's longtime studio collaborator. Released in the summer of 1974, it reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 19 on the UK singles chart. One of the song's most talked about details is its false ending. The music stops completely, leaving you convinced the song is over, and then it surges back. Simple, but perfectly executed. Hart, Thelma Houston, and others covered the song, a clear sign that fellow musicians recognized something in it. But in public memory, it has long lived in the shadow of the Elton John duet that followed. Number 9, Whiskey in the Jar by Thin Lizzy, 1972. The Irish traditional ballad, Whiskey in the Jar, had been around for centuries before Thin Lizzy got hold of it. The Dubliners had put out a widely known recording in the 1960s. What Thin Lizzy did was something arguably more difficult. They completely transformed it.
For the devil, take that woman.
In the early 1970s, the band had released 2 albums that earned critical respect, but failed commercially. During a rehearsal at a pub in London's King's Cross, Phil Lynott, guitarist Eric Bell, and drummer Brian Downey were bored and uninspired. Lynott picked up a guitar and started playing old Irish standards. Their manager Ted Carroll walked in, heard it, and suggested they record it as a B-side. Both Lynott and Bell were skeptical. They had left Ireland partly to get away from that kind of music.
There's whiskey in the jar.
Bell took the song home on cassette, drew inspiration from the Chieftains, and worked out a guitar solo that gave the track an entirely new dimension. Dick Rowe, head of Decca Records, insisted it become the A-side. Released on November 3rd, 1972, the single hit number 1 in Ireland for 17 consecutive weeks and number 6 in the UK. For years, its success tagged the band as a one-hit wonder until 1976's Jailbreak Changed Everything. Metallica's 1998 cover, built directly on Thin Lizzy's arrangement, later won a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance.
Wait for my daddy-o.
Number 8, The Bottle by Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson, 1974. Gil Scott-Heron is most often remembered for The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. the 1971 spoken word piece, widely cited as a forerunner of hip-hop, but The Bottle, released in 1974 on the independent Strata East label, is a different kind of track entirely, and in some ways, a more remarkable one.
His old man got a problem, and it's a bad one.
Scott-Heron said the song came from observing people outside a liquor store in Northern Virginia, where they lined up daily to exchange empty bottles for a discount on the next purchase. He talked with some of them, a former physician, an air traffic controller who had walked off the job one day and never returned. Those real stories became the backbone of the song. What makes The Bottle unusual is how it sounds given its subject. Brian Jackson's flute runs over a Caribbean-flavored rhythm that moves with warmth and looseness, more likely to get people on their feet than weigh them down. The Houston Press described it as a strong anti-alcohol piece built on a funky bass hook and chilly flute fills. The whole arrangement sits somewhere between jazz, soul, and something harder to name. The single peaked at number 15 on the Billboard R&B chart. That commercial showing attracted Clive Davis, who signed Scott-Heron to Arista Records in 1975. NME ranked The Bottle number 92 on their list of the top 150 singles of all time. Pitchfork placed it at number 137 on their 2016 list of the 200 best songs of the 1970s. For a song that earned that kind of critical recognition, it has remained surprisingly absent from most conversations about the decade. Number 7, Coney Island Baby by Lou Reed, 1976.
When you're all alone and you're lonely.
Lou Reed spent most of the 1970s releasing difficult records. Berlin in 1973 was a dark orchestral song cycle that most listeners found overwhelming. Metal Machine Music in 1975 was an hour of guitar feedback that even devoted fans struggled to defend. By the time Coney Island Baby came out in 1976, Reed was working with a quieter emotional register. The title track is one of the most vulnerable things he ever recorded. Slow, sparse, and stripped of the art rock distance that defined much of his earlier solo work.
Something like a circus or a zoo.
Reed had spent time at the New York City School of Performing Arts as a young man, dreaming of playing football and simply fitting in. The song circles back to that period and to the feeling of wanting something uncomplicated in a life that never quite cooperated. The song has a reputation in certain circles, but has never entered the general conversation around Reed's catalog the way Walk on the Wild Side has. Iowa Public Radio's 2025 retrospective on underrated songs of the decade described it as a beautifully sad track that remains one of Reed's most deeply felt recordings. For anyone who has always found his more experimental work hard to access, this is a different door into the same building. Number 6, Son of a Lovin' Man by Buchanan Brothers, 1969/early 1970s. Few songs capture the spirit of the early 1970s as completely as this one, which is all the more remarkable given how little is documented about the group that recorded it. The Buchanan Brothers remain one of the more mysterious entries in the catalog of that period. Very little biographical information has been preserved, and the record has the quality of something discovered rather than manufactured. A raw, toe-tapping piece of Americana that sounds like it came from somewhere in the American South.
Son, I'm the son of a loving man.
Musically, it opens with a lazy, unhurried guitar groove that almost dares you to pay attention. The drums sit back in the pocket, the rhythm guitar lopes rather than drives, and the vocal carries a sun-warmed confidence that felt entirely natural for the era. It has the feeling of a long summer afternoon that doesn't know it's about to end. Quentin Tarantino placed it in his 2019 film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, using it to anchor a very specific feeling about that era.
Son, I'm the son of a loving man.
A new generation of listeners went looking for more information and found almost none. Far Out magazine's survey of the 100 most underrated songs of the 1970s described it as so obscure it might as well reside in a museum, and yet it remains completely alive as a piece of music. The mystery and the music are two separate things, and the music is more than enough to stand on its own. Number 5, 20th Century Boy by T-Rex, 1973. T-Rex was never completely invisible. Mark Bolan had a devoted following on both sides of the Atlantic, and songs like Get It On, Bang a Gong had crossed over into mainstream consciousness. But within T-Rex's own catalog, 20th Century Boy sits in an unusual position, known to those who dig a little deeper, largely absent from the conversations that surround the band. Released in March 1973, the song reached number 3 on the UK singles chart. In the United States, it barely registered, and while it is not unknown, it has never quite received the same attention as the band's earlier material. What it has is a guitar riff that lodges itself permanently in the brain. Bolan wrote the song and delivered it with a swagger that stands up to anything in the hard rock catalog of that decade. Iowa Public Radio's 2025 retrospective on underrated 1970s songs called it easily one of T-Rex's best songs, arguably much more exciting than their bigger American hit. Bolan died in September 1977 at the age of 29, 2 weeks before his 30th birthday, in a car accident in London. His catalog has been reevaluated many times since, but 20th Century Boy still hasn't fully received its due outside of the UK. Number 4, Heartbreaker by Free, 1973.
Must have been a heartbreaker.
Free is mostly remembered today for All Right Now, the 1970 single that has appeared in hundreds of commercials, film soundtracks, and sporting events over the decades. Paul Rodgers' voice on that track became so familiar that the song entered the shared cultural furniture. But Free had more in them than one famous recording, and Heartbreaker, the title track from their 1973 album, makes that case with considerable force.
I'm breaking my own heart.
By the time the album was recorded, the band was fraying. Original guitarist Paul Kossoff was dealing with serious health problems, and Free would officially disband later that year, with Rodgers going on to form Bad Company. The weight of all of that is somehow audible in Heartbreaker. It has a rawness that the band's more polished recordings don't quite match. The Blues Rock Review, in an August 2024 retrospective on underrated blues rock songs of the 1970s, placed Heartbreaker at the top of their list, noting that Paul Kossoff's guitar work on the track remains some of the most emotionally direct playing of the entire decade. Joe Bonamassa would later cover the song on his album Dust Bowl, adding it to a tradition of blues musicians recognizing what Free had accomplished here. It is a song that deserved a much longer run on radio than it ever received. Number 3, Walk on Hot Coals by Rory Gallagher, 1973. Rory Gallagher is one of those musicians who commands absolute devotion from the people who discovered him and near total anonymity from everyone else. The Irish guitarist released a steady stream of albums throughout the 1970s. each one a testament to a command of the blues guitar that very few of his contemporaries could match. Walk on Hot Coals appeared on his 1973 album Blueprint, and it showcases exactly what made Gallagher special. The song moves with a restless, coiled energy, guitar work that is technically precise, but never cold, always driven by feel. During his lifetime, Gallagher was known as one of the greatest live performers in rock music. Jimi Hendrix, when asked by a journalist in 1968 how it felt to be the world's greatest guitarist, reportedly replied, "I don't know. Ask Rory Gallagher." Gallagher passed away in 1995, and his hometown of Ballyshannon in County Donegal, Ireland, named a street corner after him, a memorial that speaks to how deeply his music was felt in the places that knew him best. In the broader world of rock history, he remains one of the most undervalued figures of the era. Walk on Hot Coals is a good place to understand why his admirers felt that way so strongly. Number 2, Ride Captain Ride by Blues Image, 1970.
From the San Francisco Bay.
Ride Captain Ride is one of those songs that almost doesn't seem like it should have faded. It reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1970, which is no small thing. But despite that chart performance, the band behind it, Blues Image, a Tampa, Florida-based rock group, never had another major hit, and the song itself has drifted into a kind of comfortable semi-obscurity over the decades. The story behind the number at the center of the song is one of rock music's better origin stories. The opening lyric, 73 men sailed up, came from the band's singer and chief songwriter Mike Pinera in an unusual way.
Rolled off of the ship, and here's what they had.
As Pinera later explained, he needed a first word, and the number 73 simply came to him because that was the number of keys on his piano. The rhythm of it felt right, and the song wrote itself from there. Far Out magazine's survey of the most underrated songs of the 1970s called it a quintessential 70s jam and expressed genuine puzzlement at why it had faded from wider consciousness. The song has that quality. It sounds exactly like the era it came from, in the very best way. Blues Image broke up not long after the song's success. Pinera went on to join Iron Butterfly, but Ride Captain Ride remained the high point of his recording career. Number 1, Cindy Incidentally by Faces, 1973. The Faces had a problem. They were a genuinely great rock band. Rod Stewart on vocals, Ron Wood on guitar, Ronnie Lane on bass, Ian McLagan on keys, and Kenny Jones on drums. But in many people's minds, they were simply the group Rod Stewart was in between solo records. That perception made it difficult for the band to be taken on their own terms. Cindy Incidentally was released in February 1973 and reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. It never found its footing in the United States, and over the years has remained far better known among devoted fans than in wider circulation. The song has the looseness that defined the Faces at their best. A pub rock warmth, Rod Stewart's vocal sitting right up front, and a melody that is immediately singable.
There ain't nothing, no, nothing.
Rod Stewart departed at the end of 1975, and the band effectively ended with him. Ron Wood joined the Rolling Stones. Ronnie Lane, who had already left, spent the rest of his life dealing with multiple sclerosis before passing away in 1997. The Faces never got a proper farewell. Cindy Incidentally is one of the best arguments for paying them closer attention.
Drink around to this town, bid goodbye.
The 1970s were enormous. Radio stations of the time were so overwhelmed with talent, that some of it simply had to fall through the cracks. But music doesn't disappear just because radio stopped playing it. It waits. Every single one of the songs on this list is still out there, fully alive, still capable of stopping someone in their tracks the first time they hear it. That's one of the genuinely great things about the streaming era, the ability to go back and find what was missed the first time around. So go find these songs, put them on, share them with someone who remembers what it felt like to discover music that seemed meant just for you. If this video brought something back or introduced you to something new, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does make a difference, and there's a lot more where this came from. We'll see you in the next one.